This is what the Sri Lankan authorities want you to see. So the cameraman from State TV films a government official dispensing supplies to a fraction of the tens of thousands of homeless Tamils. But this is not the whole picture. We've not been allowed near the camps despite repeated requests, but those brave enough to speak out have given us written statements about the terrible overcrowding there, the poor hygiene and the atrocities they've witnessed by both sides. One woman with links to the camps but too scared to be identified told us of rapes inside them and of young men in particular being taken away by soldiers.
I believe that there is sexual assault and harassment in the camps. I believe that these children and the young ones are going to get disappeared, but we don't know what is happening to them because there is no information, there is no transparency, we just don't know what's happening.
Others who've witnessed abuses didn't want to take the risk. The Tamil people who struggled out of the battle zone are now at the mercy of the troops they feared for so long. The military believes Tiger rebels escaped by hiding amongst them, so they're being processed, the army says, with families being forcibly split up.
Families who are separated, where you have a child with the mother and the father is in another location, or the child is with the father and the mother is in another location, that's quite high. Up to about 70% or so are in this category. But we do also have children who are completely alone, and that is more urgent.
The aid agencies are not only being denied access to the camps, there are so many restrictions it's virtually impossible to help these people. The camps are huge, some of them 100 acres large, yet the military has banned the agencies from using vehicles. And listen to this response from one government official when I asked him about the allegations of sexual abuse in the camps.
There are a few blue-eyed children in that camp, so you'll know that some of the NGOs have had a jolly good time when they were up in Vavunia. So when you go up, just have a look and try and identify them.
The aid workers, or NGOs as they're called, are seen as Tamil Tiger sympathisers, perhaps because of their insistence on helping the Tamils. And many believe there's a campaign of turning public opinion against them.
It often comes out into newspapers where a very bad portrayal of the NGOs is put forward, and we are viewed often as the white tigers.
There's a nationalistic fever now, and while the government talks unity, the ground reality for the Tamil minority is very different. They feel alienated and talk of being forced to fly the Sinhalese flag or face being seen as traitors. And the Tamils believe this is just the start of a specific plan which has government support to persecute and intimidate them. Alex Crawford, Sky News, Colombo. There was plenty of pomp and ceremony. For the Sinhalese president, this was a moment to savour. This was the formal declaration of victory. The tone was conciliatory, but there was no mistaking the triumphant mood. He talked of unity and giving equal rights to all. But on the streets of the Sinhalese-dominated capital, the celebrations are likely to be viewed with some unease by the Tamil minority who found themselves on the wrong side of the war. Hundreds of thousands of them who were caught up in the fighting are now in camps where there are repeated reports of abuse and ill-treatment, claims which are difficult to substantiate or deny because of the government's restrictions on reporting there. Certainly pro-Tamil websites have used images claiming numerous human rights abuses during the military mission. And Britain and the European Union want an investigation into possible war crimes. The accusations are flatly denied by the government.
I think the international community now must look at how we did it objectively and give us the marks that should be given, that we have done it in the way that they hope.
But watchdog groups continue to be worried, with criticism about the tactics and the use of heavy weaponry in an area which still had so many civilians. The government says the criticisms from an influential Tamil expat population operating in overseas capitals like London and Washington. But Sri Lankan journalists, too fearful to be identified, talk of widespread intimidation.
In the future, we'll face a difficult time. The culture of impunity must come to an end. The government has a duty to put an end to this.
And then there's the question of what happened in the final hours of battle to the Tiger leader Vallupillai Prabhakaran. The fighting may be over, but there's still huge challenges in marshalling the peace. Alex Crawford, Sky News, Colombo. The Sri Lankan military says these are the last civilians to flee the battle zone. There are thousands of them, many of them looking utterly wretched. The army says they were held as human shields, kept against their will by the rebels. Some bore the physical scars of the fighting, and many were obviously traumatized.
So I hope that sanity will prevail and that the world will recognize what Sri Lanka has achieved entirely, almost entirely on its own. The much predicted, in fact, let me say, much anticipated bloodbath never occurred.
But these pictures, broadcast on state television, show fighting still very much going on, and shattered civilians, some holding up white pieces of cloth, being shepherded out by equally exhausted-looking troops. The Tiger rebels are now surrounded on a strip of land no bigger than half a square mile. And the troops are now going all out to finish them off. The President may have declared the Tigers, or LTTE, are spent as a military force, but they're still giving them trouble. Cornered and with no way out, the rebels appear to be holding back the government troops by blowing up their own ammunition. And left behind in their retreat, packs of suicide vests. Independent observers are barred from the conflict zone, so all these claims cannot be verified. But the soldiers are pressing ahead despite an announcement posted on the pro-Tamil website declaring they are silencing their guns. The President's declaration that the Tigers have been defeated prompted celebrations in the Sri Lankan capital. They've waited nearly 3 decades for this. It's led to an outpouring of patriotic fervour, and that's been coupled with concern that this could provoke revenge attacks on the Tamil community.
But the government's anxious to avoid being seen as too triumphalist, especially with the continuing alarm amongst the international community over the plight of tens of thousands of civilians.
More than 200,000 civilians are being held in camps and being processed, as the government describes it. They can't leave, and they've nowhere to go now anyway. The United Nations is still very worried about their treatment, and a special UN envoy is in the country to try to find out just what the government's planning for these homeless people who've been through so much already. Alex Crawford, Sky News, Colombo.